Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Southern Outdoorsman Podcast. Today, we're just outside Baton Rouge, Louisiana, talking to Mr. Chase Metz. Chase, how are you?
Hey, what's going on? Doing good.
Dude, you got a pretty neat little space right here.
Yeah, I got a little outdoor area to entertain friends and have all my mounted animals away from my house so my wife doesn't have to look at them.
Dude, listen, this is a pretty neat little building. I need some kind of setup like this, a little apartment away from the house where maybe Jacob could live.
Sure.
and grow old.
When you get in trouble, you can retreat out here.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Me and Tiff, last time we were looking at houses, we're like, where's Jacob going to stay?
Yeah, it's very important.
Jacob, how are you?
Doing great. Other than you throwing me under the bus, but yes, no, it's great. It's great being out here. So Chase, super excited to have you on the podcast. So you've been a long time listener of the show, and I've talked to you through social media, and I think in the past I've asked you about doing the podcast, and you've told me no a couple times. I'm pretty certain of it. And then finally, when we were coming down here to Louisiana to interview some guys, I was asking our buddy, mutual friend, Kyler, about like, hey, is there anybody else you know of? And I was kind of running some guests by him. He's like, man, you got to get Chase on. So ended up texting you about it after we were getting Warren Womack on the podcast. And I was like, we got to figure out a topic. And I think we got a really interesting one for us today, which is integrating your kids, getting your kids into hunting and really to love the outdoors. And this is an interesting conversation, especially for, of course, if you have young kids out here, I think there's going to be a lot you can get out of it. But if you don't have kids quite yet and you're married or you're dating somebody and you want to have kids in the future, it'd be an interesting conversation. Because one thing I kind of want to start off with is something I've kind of noticed from interviewing a bunch of guys is there's a lot of the real killers on the podcast, which you're a killer, by the way, too. But a lot of the guys we've had on the podcast, some of them, at least the ones I've known the best, some of their kids don't actually stay into hunting. Their kids, by the time they get to adults, they hunted as a young kid and they kind of got out of it for whatever reason. And I'm interested with your boys, you get 3 boys, how, what that game plan is, kind of keep them into it, keep them excited as they get older and older. But Chase, to kick us off, give us a little rundown. Give me your relationship of you and your dad as you were a young kid hunting with him. What was that like?
Sure. Well, I want to start by saying that I was blessed to have a father that took me hunting every opportunity he had. He had a busy job, worked in a plant, but he made a point to take me every time he went. And what that means is anytime he was invited to go somewhere, one of the first questions he asked was, "Can Chase come with me?" And a lot of times that was a no, a lot of times it was a yes. And you think about it as a adult, you get invited to go to some fancy hunting place, and the first thing you say is, can my son come with me? And it's hard to say no. And whenever that opportunity comes. But anyway, I was blessed to go to some really great places with him, and just bringing me along with his friends, squirrel hunting, deer hunting, dove hunting, doing other things besides, just the youth hunt one time a year. And I see a lot of people bringing their kids one time a year, stuff like that. And it's kind of hard to get a kid interested when they don't get to go a lot.
Yeah. Well, especially now this day and age, you get all the technology as a big distraction. Plus,
Absolutely.
If kids are getting into sports and all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of things kind of get them distracted during hunting season that may not want them or may keep them from wanting to stay in the woods, especially when stuff's slow. So one thing you were telling us about while we were kind of lining this up and getting out here is like you were just kind of working with your boys actually squirrel hunting and going out there and kind of having some fun. How did small game hunting for you guys growing up, talking about with your dad, how was that a factor for you all kind of as a kid?
Well, we've heard other people say over and over again about the woodsman aspect that comes with small game hunting, and it might seem cliche to say that over and over again, but it's the truth. And you can tell when you meet somebody whether they grew up small game hunting or not. Maybe not when you first meet them, but just talking to them a little bit, especially if you get to go to the woods with them. And little small, minute details that other people take for granted. Whenever you have that background of walking around the woods with a gun in your hand and not just sitting in a box stand, not just sitting in a ground blind, and able to move around through the woods and knowing when to move and when to stop, when to be quiet, it makes a difference. And when you have a mentor that takes you under their wing and shows you these things, even when you don't think that it's making a difference, it really is. I bring these kids out here in the yard and just moving around the yard, and we have woods around our property, and just being able to go out in these woods and see a squirrel out in a tree and be able to sneak up to that tree as quietly as possible, and knowing when to move. When the squirrel's feeding, you can just sneak up underneath the tree and knowing when to take the shot. Is little small things taking the gun off safety, back on safety, and just doing the small things makes a huge difference. And I think that carries on the rest of your life. And if a kid that has a good foundation of small game hunting travels on with them. So.
Yeah, I want to get way deeper into that because I feel like that's where you really like forge your passion and your love for the outdoors. That's where it happened for me. That's where it's happened for a lot of people that we talk to, and some people not so much. Like Jacob, it wasn't like that with him. What I want to ask you is, when did it happen for you? Like what sparked it for you when you were a kid going with your dad? Was it the deer? Was it the squirrels? Was it ducks? Like what kind of hooked you into the outdoors?
Right. I'm definitely going to go back to say squirrel hunting. And I was able to, I killed my first deer when I was 8 years old. And that was, I guess the first time I was able to kill a deer unassisted, holding the gun by myself, shoot a deer. But before that, we were squirrel hunting. He was bringing me with him when I was 4 or 5 years old, something like that. Anyway, traveling through the woods, just tailing behind him, showing me when to move, when to be quiet, when to sit down, and just that foundation started. So I would have to say squirrel hunting, and we were able to kill wood ducks and go do other kinds of hunting just besides deer hunting, dove hunting and stuff like that. But definitely squirrel hunting would be the one that really roped in that passion.
Yeah, dude, same thing with me. There's something about it being a little kid.
Sure.
Now, were you always squirrel hunting with your dad, or when you were a kid, did he just kind of let you?
Yeah,
He's like, he just hands you a gun, and he's like, "Have fun, son."
Yeah. So, and it's crazy to think like a lot of y'all's guests are older guys, and they tell, they just got dropped off on the side of the road or this and that. I'm only 33 years old, but whenever I was a kid, my dad brought me squirrel hunting, and he would spend time with me and show me all the ropes. But I was 9, 10 years old, and he would send me out in the backyard with a crack barrel 20 gauge and 3 bullets and said, if you don't come back with the squirrel, then you don't get to hunt again tomorrow. And it wasn't so much that, we needed the meat, because it definitely wasn't that. It was, I don't want you to go out there and shooting at blue jays and robins and anything else illegal or doing not something that you weren't supposed to do. And I want you to actually take ethical shots and hunt. And it's funny, I have a little quick story about going out there with a crack barrel 20 gauge. I could cock the gun fine, but I couldn't uncock the gun. To uncock a crack barrel, you have to put your finger on the hammer and actually squeeze the trigger slowly. And so if I cocked the gun to shoot an animal and I couldn't take the shot, I would lay the gun down on the ground, pointing in a safe direction, and run back to the house and get my dad and get him to come out there and uncock the gun. So that should tell you that's how young I was when I first started going by myself. And now that I have kids and I have my oldest son, Easton, is to the age to where now he's 9 years old, and I let him walk to the back with a gun and really, mentor him on what the small things, do this, don't do this, whatever. Maybe sometimes it seems like I'm overcoaching him, but I know kind of what to look for and what things, it's a lot, but yeah. I'm sorry to ramble, but yeah.
No, I'm excited to have this conversation because it's such a fun conversation to have. And like Jacob said, some of the most absolute hardcore hunters that I know, which I'm definitely in that camp, like as far as just how much you were into, like very one track minded, like this is what we do. We hunt. A lot of times their kids just don't take to it. Sure. And I think part of it is some kids are just going to be not into it. Yeah. It's just not everybody's cup of tea. But I think other ones could have been into it and they got burned off of it. They got burned out at a very early age. And that's kind of one of the things that I want to end up talking about in this. So I just want to continue to dive into your background a little bit more. So you forged your passion for the outdoors through squirrel hunting. What was that progression then like?
Sure.
Were you like, Dad, can we go tomorrow? I mean,
yes.
What did it look like?
It was nonstop. And that's what I go back again. I was lucky to have a great father that took the time to any opportunity he had, he brought me. And so you see these kids that kind of get a passion into a little bit, but they don't have somebody to bring them. And that's hard to deal with. But luckily I had somebody that would bring me every weekend, every other week. If he had to work, if we didn't go, it's because he had to work. But other than that, we're going. And I wanted to do it all. I wanted to squirrel hunt, dove hunt, duck hunt. It was just a passion right from the beginning. And luckily I had a dad that would bring me out there and sit in the stand with me and set me up. And I'm going to go into that a little bit more later on as far as the setup with kids. But he knew that we couldn't sit all day long. And there were certain aspects we had to do. I'm not going to dive into that right this second, but he knew not to burn me out too soon. And if it was too cold, too hot, too late, too whatever. He made, the appropriate decision to, end it or whatever. So.
Yeah. So now, did you have any like friends growing up that were also really into hunting, or did you have any friends that kind of got burned out, when they were younger?
Both sides of that, and but no, I'm the area that we're from here in South Louisiana, everybody's a hunter. It's more of a you're different if you don't. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it's the commonality. I mean,
That's why I like South Louisiana.
Everybody has woods in their backyard that they were able to go to, whether it was theirs or not. Nobody cared, and they were able to just walk out their back door and go hunting, or their dad had a timber lease or whatever. So that's normal. Yeah.
Okay.
And so we had friends that did the same things. We had common interests. You go to school and talk about how many squirrels you killed or killed a deer or whatnot. So
yeah. Now, at what point do you feel like, when you're like a little kid, you're just kind of like following your parents around, and you want to make your dad proud, and you love your mom and everything. Hopefully if you came from an intact home. Now, at what I'm asking about, what I'm curious about is, at what point did it change from Dad's taking me hunting to Dad, can we go hunting?
Sure. It's funny you said the mom thing, and I have to add this too. My dad worked out of town a lot when he was traveling, and there was times where my mom would actually bring me out there, and she knew nothing about hunting, could care nothing about hunting, but that's what I wanted to do. So I mean, that's how serious I was about it. And we could hunt right out our back door. Y'all been here? Y'all been here now? You see, we have woods and property. Was able to go right out the back door and squirrel hunt and stuff like that. And she would bring me out here squirrel hunting in the backyard, and would actually walk out there with me and make sure I was okay. And actually there's a wood duck hole, and was able to walk out there. It was like my birthday one year. I forgot how old I was, 8, 9, 10 years old. And I said, the only thing I want to do for my birthday is I want to go shoot a wood duck. She's like, oh my goodness. I mean, I can't bring you to the movie or anything. Like, no, that's what I want to do. So she actually went out and stood out there with me and let me shoot a wood duck. So anyway, it comes from both sides. And
nice.
Yeah.
Props to mom.
Yeah, for sure. But anyway, I'm sorry. What was your question?
So at what point did it change from, at what point did it get to that, where it went from Dad's taking me hunting to I'm like wanting to go?
Yeah. So I remember hunting for the first time by myself when I was 10 years old. And what my dad would do is we hunted on a timber company lease. Like a lot of people are going to listen to this. They had I forgot if it was Royal Martin, whatever it was. We had a timber company lease, about 400 acres. And my dad would let me pick. It was a couple of older guys or family members that were hunting with us. And since I was a kid, they would let me hunt whatever stand I wanted to. It was no draw system or anything. It was back when you could kill whatever you want to, brown it's down. We're just here to have fun. And I wish we would get more back to that. But anyway, I would get to pick whatever stand I wanted to. If this was the stand somebody hunted that morning, they saw a deer and they didn't shoot it or couldn't get a shot, and I was the little 10-year-old kid said, Dad, I want to hunt that stand, that I was good to hunt it. Nobody was jealous. It was all good times. And I would get on the stand, or I would pick a stand, and my dad would just pin the closest stand to mine. And when it was time for us to go hunting, we'd walk in the woods together, and he would walk me to my stand, a box stand, and closed box stand, and would climb up and put the gun in the stand, load it, make sure everything was good, and climb down. And I would climb back in and get in the stand, get situated, and he would walk to his stand. And after the hunt, I would stay in my stand even after dark, no matter how long it took. It might be 30 minutes or an hour, sit there, and he would come back to me and get the gun out of the stand. And so I didn't have to get a loaded gun in and out of the stand. And so from right then I started hunting by myself, and then making the transition to traveling. At 16, I got a driver's license, and it was ready to roll then. I had friends that hunted, and that was new opportunities far and wide then. I could drive wherever. My parents let me go, and I would, if you had a hunting place, I was willing and ready. So I would travel. No matter if it was squirrels, ducks, deer, turkeys, whatever, I was ready to go. So
yeah. So now moving on to your kids. So how many kids do you have? You got 3 kids.
9, 7, and 5. Easton, Mason, Carson.
Okay. So just give me an overview. What's the game plan with your boys? Maybe they'll look back and listen to this one day.
Yeah, overview. I do not want to have kids that know hunting as going to, and let me start by saying this. Any time that a dad is willing to spend time with their kids is precious, it's memorable, it's great. And I have been afforded the opportunity to have the property, the time to do it. I work a job. I'm a fireman by trade, and I have the time to spend with my kids. A lot of parents don't. I do. So I feel like it is my obligation to scout, hunt during the week, do whatever I need to do. So whenever it's time for them to go, I'm putting them in the best opportunity I can. Whether that's not go after a turkey that's gobbling during the week because I can save it for my kids. Or we have deer in the backyard. I don't shoot deer in the backyard because I save them for my kids, stuff like that. I got a little off track with that, but I want my kids to be well-rounded in hunting. I don't want them to be a box stand sitting, looking at an iPad, staring at a corn feeder, waiting for the deer we had on cell camera to come out. And I'm not throwing shade at people that do that. It's great that you do that, and I hope your kids take to it. But I see a lot of kids that get burnt out whenever that's the only thing that they know about hunting. And I want my kids to be able to walk into the woods and say, that's a white oak and that's a cow oak, and there's a difference between the two. And I want my kids to be able to say, yeah, it's in the red oak family, but that's a nuttall, and that's a true southern red oak, and that's a water oak, and that's a willow oak, and know the difference between those species and the drop times, and that squirrels feed on water oaks early, and the deer feed on different things throughout the season, and different browses and plants and stuff like that. I want my kids to be well-rounded and know that every season that comes along, not just deer hunting. I want them to know squirrel hunting and deer hunting and shooting wood ducks off the creeks and big ducks and turkey season and just all the things that come along with it. Real well-rounded. That's my goal. You know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and dude, again, I love this conversation because we're interviewing you,
Sure.
but I'm going to interject myself in this conversation.
Sure.
When I was growing up, my dad, the way that he took me out, we squirrel hunted when I was a little kid, and we had a really good time. Like I really enjoyed that as like a young kid. The deer hunting, I didn't necessarily enjoy that much when I was a little kid.
Sure.
I remember a lot of times my dad would come to wake me up before daylight, and he would, shake me awake. He'd be like, "Hey, get up, get ready," and I'd be like, "I don't want to go," and I wouldn't get up out of bed and go with him.
Sure.
And but I'd go squirrel hunt, or I'd go rabbit hunt, or I'd go do this or that. But the deer hunting I didn't really like to do because it was boring to me, I guess.
Sure.
And then eventually, he ended up passing away when I was 14, and I was kind of taken under the wing of another guy, Ben George, who's been on the podcast before. He's my mentor, and God bless my dad.
Sure.
He was not a woodsman. Okay. He liked to go hunt, but he hunted when he was a little kid growing up with my great grandfather in Walker County, Alabama. There was no deer in the 70s back then, so they small game hunted. And then he didn't really hunt in high school and college. And then 8 or 9 years after college, when they got pregnant with me, he got back into it because he wanted me to be into it.
Sure.
And because of that, again, God bless him, wasn't a great deer hunter at all. He struggled, and he did kill some deer, and we got on some deer, but it was pretty rare. And he just didn't know the things about the woods that other people did. Ben, on the other hand, was like the kind of guy kill a deer in a Walmart parking lot. Yeah. Like the dude just knows.
Sure.
And going with him, I would say kind of like the question that you asked me earlier, at what point did it go from I'm going hunting with Dad to I've got a serious drive for this, is really when Ben took me under his wing, and all of a sudden he started telling me these. He's like, this is a white oak, this is a water oak, this is this is that. Oh, this is where those wood ducks like to hang out.
Sure.
This is where you can find fox squirrels,
Yep.
And just, I don't know, as a young boy, getting that knowledge really meant something to me.
Absolutely.
It gives you something to kind of grow off of, and it gives you something where you're like, oh, I'm getting kind of good at this.
Sure.
And it's like a confidence builder.
Sure.
I'm just curious on how that strikes you. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And just knee-jerk reaction, I'd say from 16 to maybe 22, 23, I kind of fumbled my way around that as far as establishing what kind of style hunter I was going to be and who I wanted to be, and did a lot of wrong things, did a lot of right things, and made a lot of friendships, and hunted a lot of different ways. I hunted public land, I did private land, I went on guided hunts, did all kind of different stuff. I tried duck hunting for 2 years and did a lot of different things. It wasn't real just one-dimensional. I talk to these guys like, oh, I've only hunted public land, I've only hunted private land, I've done a lot of it, not like beat my chest. I've just tried a lot of different things. And one thing that really stood out to me, or I kind of circle back to, and going off of what you just said, is kind of like when that light bulb clicked and you kind of said, this is what excites me and this is what I can't live without, is my dad made the foundation there, and that's what lit the fire. So I can't stress that enough. But when Warren Womack started talking about his way of killing deer, and kind of the hard way, but the hunting deer on their own terms, as far as not making a food plot or hunting over feed or whatever, not saying he's never done that before, but he was showing me a different way. And I reached out to him, and he brought me under his wing, brought me to his house, showed me the difference between different kinds of trees, and he brought me out to the Homerton National Forest and showed me. Anyway,
Come on, man.
Brought me out. Sorry, cut. Anyway, I had Warren Womack brought me out there and showed me different things and showed me different spots to hunt and really took me under his wing. And doing that, I learned the emphasis on oak trees. And I don't want to sound like I'm an oak tree fanatic, but I'm really good with oak trees. And I think that even if you're not a big oak tree guy or a big feed tree guy, being able to tell what kind of tree it is at 100 yards away without having to walk up to it and look at the bark and look at the leaves and look at the droppings underneath it and be able to tell from a distance is huge. Because when you're walking through a creek bottom and you don't have to cross the creek to go see what kind of tree it is, that's a big deal. And I don't feel like I hear a lot of guys talk about that, but that is a big deal to me. I mean, when you can narrow down areas just by passing through them quickly, and you can kind of scale out areas and know, is that a water oak tree or is that a gum tree at 100 yards distance on a swift walk, you can cross out a lot of area very quickly without having to ping pong around. So I kind of lost where we were at on that one.
No, I mean, again, and I think, if you're passing that along to your kids,
sure.
And especially like a younger boy,
Sure.
And they develop that skill set, it's like, what does that do for a 12, 13-year-old boy where, again, he's starting to get good at something. He's starting to have ownership of something where he's like,
Sure.
hey, this could be like my thing.
Sure.
And he's starting to develop a skill set that maybe his buddies don't have, or maybe his buddies do have, who knows. But he's starting to have ownership of something where when you're like 12 years old, your entire world is just owned by everybody else. You follow your parents around, you do what they say, but this is something that you can have and you can do.
Yep.
And again, that perspective just kind of interests me, and that's
Yep.
kind of what I was getting at there. I was just curious on your thoughts on it.
Yep. I think that it's important, and I think that developing their own style will come, and maybe they won't follow the style that I gave to them, but I think that my plan and my hopes is to lay that foundation that whenever somebody invites them and says, hey, Chase, hey, Easton or Mason, Carson, one of my kids, you want to go duck hunting, they're well-rounded enough to know that, oh, yeah, I have a shotgun in the closet, and I have all the ammunition for it and the boots and all the stuff, and they're able to go confidently. They may not be an expert duck hunter, but they're able to go out there with confidence and handle themselves and handle the weapon and know the difference between when to take the safety off, when you're about to take the shot and put it back on. Just this little small, minute things. My plan is to lay that foundation for them, and I think that's a big deal. It really is.
Yeah, definitely. Because if they have that foundation, then they can go figure out what it is they like to
Absolutely.
do.
Absolutely.
Again, going back to maybe they want to duck hunt, maybe they want to squirrel hunt, maybe they want to deer hunt.
Sure.
Whatever the
Sure.
case may be. So you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier about, I guess, what your plan is with your kids about being able to take them out in the backyard and everything, and take them deer hunting, take them squirrel hunting. But are there any other steps? Like, what is your overall view of how do you start to lay that foundation in a successful way?
Yep. So to start it off, I like to bring my kids during the summertime, and I have a lease that I'm in that I lease pretty much just for them. You can ask the guys that are there. If I don't have a kid with me, it's very rare that you see me out there. I like to have some private land to where when it's cold, when it's miserable, whatever. If I have a deer that's tied to a feeder, if we want to go sit in a box stand and shoot it, yes, I want them to be well-rounded and say that, hey, we had some private land to hunt. I really like it for the turkeys, honestly. It's a whole different aspect, turkey hunting on private land versus public land. But anyway, laying that groundwork, I like to incorporate the kids during the summertime and letting them ride with me to go check the feeders, check the cameras, field the feeders, bush hog, do stuff like that, and just walk the woods with me and learn new places and walk the creek bottoms. And even when it's 90 degrees, everybody says, oh, I'm not going out there, it's too hot, it's too this. Okay, go hit a creek bottom and bring the kids in their bathing suits and y'all go run around the creek, and while you're out there, explain to them, hey, this is what an SMZ is, this is what this looks like, and look for arrowheads. Even though we hadn't found any, we're in an area that they're there, and just incorporating kids into doing, or heck, bring a fishing pole with you and go out there and walk a creek. I got pictures I shared on my Facebook this year of us walking creeks and wearing the bass out, and that was a blast. It was kind of unexpected. I didn't think it was going to be as good as it was. But I mean, those little nuggets like that, I really feel like those boys will take that with them. Even if they say, oh, I don't like hunting, well, they'll like to fish, or they'll like this, or whatever. I mean, it's just kind of instilling that groundwork that it's not just the hunt itself, it's all the things that lead up to it.
Yeah, and also we talk a lot about woodsmanship on the podcast, and everyone who we've been interviewing over the last couple weeks talks a ton about woodsmanship. And one common theme is just spending a lot of time out in the woods, and that's not just going out and hunting, but it's like what you're talking about. It's going and walking the creeks, and it's doing more than just going and sitting on a whatever, even like hunting feed trees for whitetail deer.
Sure.
It's more than just doing that. It's all these other things. And that's actually another thing that kind of brought up a memory for me, where that was another thing that we did is in the same woods that we squirrel, deer, and turkey hunted, in the summertime, we also waded the creeks and bass fished. It was a good way to beat the heat, and it was just kind of fun. And we took my daughter doing that. Again, she was like super small, but she had a good time. We threw her in her bathing suit, let her float around in the creek for a little bit.
Yeah, it's nice doing something whenever everybody's having fun. I mean, I know y'all don't have kids this age yet, but a lot of people listening will. And even a very involved father does a lot with their kids, but there's very little things that you do. And I told this to my wife, my mother-in-law last night. There's very few things that we do that you can honestly say all of us are having fun at the same time. As far as in hunting and fishing and scouting and riding four-wheelers and stuff kind of brings that all together. I spend a lot of time with my kids at ballparks and this and that. I'm not saying it's not fun, but it's just different. This is something to look forward to, that the whole family is having fun at the exact same time. And it's just that's kind of my draw to it, I guess.
That's a really good point, actually. That's a very, very good point. Because, when I was trying to get them to come throw some cameras on some creek crossings with me, my wife was a little skeptical. She was like, we're going to go do what? Yeah, I'm like, I promise it'll be fun. Like, the creek is cold. I know it's hot out here, but the creek is cold, and it's going to be fun. Piper's going to have fun. She's going to pick up rocks and throw them around. It's going to be a great time. And, yeah, we all had a great time, but I've never thought about it from that perspective. Everybody have fun at the same time.
Sure. Yeah, you do a lot of things for them, and you're going to bring the baby to do a lot of things. You're going to kind of like, what am I doing here? But you're doing it for them, and you're having fun, spending time with them. But this is something that everybody can be having fun at the exact same time. So, yeah.
Oh, that's pretty slick. Now, I want to introduce Jacob's perspective, because he has a different upbringing than me and you had.
Sure.
And that is, neither of his parents hunt, and his uncles got him into it.
Sure.
So why don't you kind of explain your perspective?
Yeah, so my dad doesn't really come from a hunting family. My granddad, his father, upland bird hunt a little bit. It was more so like business dealings, had some friends that would do it. Dad only hunted a few times as a young kid, went on a couple deer drives, actually dog hunts. I didn't know that until literally 2 weeks ago. He told me
Your dad did?
Yeah, I never knew that. He never carried a gun.
Dude, I could see Hal on a dog hunt. I could see that for sure.
He said he was 9, 10 years old with my granddad, and it was like some business guys, some business partners. My granddad, they all had some dogs and had some guys that they had hunt with. So he went out there, didn't have a gun, saw some deer. He's like, I don't think anybody shot any, but he's a young kid. It's my mother's side of the family. Her two brothers are the ones that got me into hunting. My two uncles, and they small game hunted when they were younger. But by the time I was around, I was that 8 years old. They were getting ready to hunt with them. They weren't small game hunting. It was straight business. We are killing deer. We are looking for taxidermy bills. That's what we're doing. Okay, and growing up with that and not really small game hunting, I only probably squirrel hunted 2 or 3 times ever as like a kid. And one of them was with another uncle who used to do it back in the 70s. We walked around with 22s, never shot anything, never found a squirrel because we were walking way too fast. Okay. And I really didn't even small game hunt per se until I went to high school. I went to a college preparatory boarding school, and we could actually have firearms there. And the school had 2,500 acres. I could have I couldn't have them in my room, but we had a safe. You could put your shotguns in, muzzleloaders, 22 rifles, stuff like that, your bow. I had a tree stand climber underneath my bed, and that's where really it lit my fire more so. Because when I was a younger kid, I just went with my uncles, and pretty much they were saying, hey, we're going to go hunt this weekend. Do you want to come? I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, they'd come pick me up at 2 o'clock in the morning. We'd drive 2 hours to a hunting club and go hunt. But in high school, I had the freedom. I didn't have a vehicle, but I could walk anywhere on that property. So it was, I would literally come out of the school building, have a firearm, my tree stand, or my bow, and just start walking and then go hunt. We killed 2 deer the whole time we were there.
Yeah, you realize nobody has that same story, right?
No.
Just making sure nobody has that.
But since then, I've learned they've kind of stopped that.
Sure.
In
they have?
Yeah,
the good old days are gone.
It's not the same anymore. But it was interesting upbringing. So like where I'm trying to get at is I never really had the small game. Like my first rabbit hunt, and I've told this. I got so much trouble at school. I was shooting squirrels on school campus. I mean, very close to buildings. Pets. Okay, yes, that were being fed, and we killed the crap out of these cottontails. and skinned them out on one of the park benches on campus and got in a ton of trouble. But that was the only rabbit hunt I've ever been on up until, pretty much college, actually after college. But that lit my fire more because I had all this land just go roam around and just go try to find sign, read sign. And uncles had taught me some stuff. But when I started small game hunting, I still haven't even squirrel hunted other than, I think the last time I squirrel hunted, you never take me squirrel hunting, Andrew.
Yeah, you filmed me.
Yeah,
you filmed me squirrel. Well, we went squirrel hunt with Kevin Murphy.
Yeah, I know. That was 2019. It's been a while.
Sure.
But the thing is I can see how the small game hunting specifically, and we talked about this for kids before in the podcast, it's such an active sport, whether I've got a bird dog now. So like whether we're upland hunting or rabbit hunting or squirrel hunting, you don't have time for technology to be on an iPad.
Absolutely.
Or on a phone or anything like that. And to me, that's where I see is like small game hunting is so much better than deer hunting to get a kid in that has a short attention span because you're constantly moving, you're constantly learning. You don't have to necessarily be quiet, especially like upland hunting. You don't have to be quiet. Rabbit hunting, at certain times you can be quiet, but you can still talk and stuff until that rabbit's coming by. But I can see how that's such a good way to get somebody excited about going out there and spending time outdoors before you really get super hard into deer hunting. So, like, my question is, because your boys are still really young, how have you managed the deer hunting side versus small game? I see the small game be a little bit more easy going. Hey, we're working on woodsmanship, but how do you focus with them on we're in a stand, a blind, however you have them set up? How do you keep them from the technology being such a distraction? They're just waiting there, and they're just there to shoot something instead of watch.
And I have an answer for that. And circling back to what I said at the beginning, that I'm proud however a dad decides to bring their kid out there. But I've done it. I've done it where I brought an iPad. I've done it where I brought a Game Boy out there, and we sat in a stand and stared at the food plot or the feeder or whatever, and it's just not as rewarding. I have times where it's the next time for us to go, and the kid's like, it's early in the morning, whatever, and it's like, I don't really feel like going. And okay, cool. And I don't pressure them, whatever. Whoever wants to come, great, we're going. If not, stay. And the next Saturday, when I say, hey, come on, guys, who's going? And they're like, oh, I don't know. And I say, oh, well, some of the guys from work invite us to go on a dog hunt to chase deer in the national forest with dogs. All of a sudden, they all three spring up and they're wide open, ready to go. I mean, think about the excitement as a kid. Like, we're going to chase deer with dogs. I mean, it's another level. So when I saw that spark light, I realized, I said, I've got to pivot fast. If not, I'm going to make it to where they don't want to deer hunt. And I hear that so many times. I mean, I talk to people that never hunted before, or their family hunted, but they never were hunters. I went one time, I froze to death, and they left me out there, and I was cold and miserable, and I was scared to pee out of the stand because they said I was going to ruin their spot and all this just head trash, and they'd never wanted to go back. And who would want to? So what I like to do, and it's something that dad stuff and think about, is if you're hunting private land and you're hunting on a feeder and it's late in the evening, wait till right before dark to go get in the stand. Or if you're hunting in the national forest and hill country, one thing I like to do is start in the morning and don't rush getting out there right at daylight. On a good cold morning when it's frosty outside, don't drag a little kid out there 30 minutes before daylight, make them sit in the dark for 30 minutes before it gets daylight enough to see. Wait till it's 7:30, 8 o'clock, the dew starts dripping. This is what time the deer are going to start moving anyway, that mid-morning time. And let's just slip hunt. We'll just walk a little ways, sit down, kind of watch an area, and I'll pick a bottom, or I guess call now a thermal hub, or spots where a bunch of bottoms come together, and we'll just kind of slip around it, and we'll start at the top of the ridge, and we'll sit there for a little while. And the first time a kid says, how long are we going to sit here, or I'm not having fun anymore, if we haven't seen anything 30, 45 minutes, an hour, jump up and walk up another 80 yards and sit back down again, and let them scratch in the leaves, let them do things, and not sitting in a stand so much. And as silly as that sounds, sitting in a fixed position, I mean, the kids don't want to do that at school. Do you think they want to do that on the weekend on their day off? No. So if you say, all right, I just want to deer hunt my kids, I don't want to do all the small game hunting that we talked about, you can do that and be successful so many different ways, hunting off the ground without a blind, without a pop-up blind, without a ladder stand, a two-man buddy stand, whatever, box stand, just slipping around hunting, finding an edge to walk down and show them sign and show them different things. That will get them interested like you won't believe. I mean, even if you don't kill anything, you could not kill anything sitting in a box stand staring down a pipeline. You could definitely not kill nothing slipping up a bottom with a kid behind you, but you'd be surprised. I mean, we've had opportunities, and actually I've shot deer, bucks with two kids walking right behind me. And I know this isn't a turkey podcast, but turkey hunting is the exact same way, even more. We don't sit and pop-up blinds, and not saying there's anything wrong with it. It's probably the most effective way to kill a turkey is to sit in a known spot to do that. But I like to, chase the gobbles or find a good area and scratch out a spot, sit there 15, 20 minutes, call a couple times. You don't hear anything, get up, walk up a couple hundred yards, do the same thing. And that'll keep the kid interested instead of just sitting in one spot and just burning up or staring at the iPad or doing the things that not conclusive to learning the woods and getting better. I mean, really.
Man, that's such a good point, because I think it can be kind of easy for us to forget that sitting and that patience game of us being still, quiet, waiting to ambush a deer. I mean, that's like a learned skill.
Sure.
And it takes a while to develop, and you got to want to.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden you're dragging this 10-year-old out there who's never, I mean, think about it. 4 hours to him, that's like a chunk of his life, compared to us.
Yeah. It's like, what's the end goal here? I mean, earlier I let my son go sit in the back by himself and sitting against a tree, and me and my dad were sitting in the front watching him. He's within eye vision, but he's 300 yards away across a big open. And while he's sitting there, I told my dad, I said, he's been back here about 10 minutes now. He don't know if he's been back there for 10 minutes or 2 hours. I mean, the time perception's way off. I mean, when you don't know how long you've been sitting there, don't have a phone, don't have a watch, don't have anything, that's a long time to just sit there. Imagine a kid sitting in a deer stand or a ground blind doing the same thing, So that's why I don't think that squirrel hunting is just so, like, the mystique of squirrel hunting. It's not like it's something that's so hard or so whatever, it just captures you. It's a attention thing. I'm moving, I'm talking, I'm learning, I'm doing all these different things.
I'm listening.
Yeah. You see that limb
sharpening
shake.
all the skills. And that's what I was telling my boys earlier, just little stuff like we're easing through the woods and we stop and we watch a limb shake, or we listen to an acorn drop and it hits the ground and the acorns aren't dropping yet. So if an acorn drop, good chance it's a squirrel that's chewing on that acorn that just dropped it out of his hands. Be looking for that. And it's just little stuff that you can't pick that up on a YouTube video or on a podcast, stuff like that. But that's stuff that you learn out in the woods. That's that cliche woodsmanship, but that's what it is.
All right, guys, we're out here today. Got a little in the field tip for you. We're scouting this fresh clear cut. I think this was cut sometime in the spring. We identified this using onX's recent imagery layer. This image is about 2 weeks old. They update this every 2 weeks, so you're getting brand new satellite images. So we were able to find this beautiful clear cut. I mean, look at this. This looks like where a lot of big bucks get killed in the South in rifle season. So we're actually using this tool along with the topo map to walk and look at this low spot over here to see if we can find a good rifle setup for when the rut comes in a couple weeks. So we're gonna walk over there and check that out. In the meantime, if you want to access this or any of the other features available with the onX Elite membership, use the promo code SOUTHERN and you can get 20% off.
I've talked about this before on other different podcast episodes we've done in the past, but like, I feel like there's such a way to make it more about what you're learning instead of what you're shooting. Because when I've seen guys, like I got family members like Anthony, all of his kids, they're all my younger cousins. They all shot their first deer in a box blind, and like the hunting style was we go sit in different box blinds on the family farm, 80 acres. You watch a food plot, and it was just a game of waiting and shooting. It wasn't like active hunting and like learning necessarily. And I think that's one reason. Like, it's kind of funny. His youngest kid, Sarah Grace, she's in high school now, and she's actually now she hasn't hunted in 5, 6 years, 7 years. I don't know. She's now curious because she's got one of her friends at school. That girl is also a big hunter, and now she's like there's like competition there. She's like, oh, I kind of want to get back into it, which is kind of cool to see.
Nice.
But it was, I think, because they weren't necessarily learning a whole bunch probably about the sign. It was just kind of walking to and from stands, going back to the house, hanging out, grabbing lunch, and going back out there. It's super boring versus like the active hunting or also reading sign. And one thing that I was thinking of, and probably worth talking about with you, is when you're, I'm going to call it slip hunting with them during deer season, whether you have the gun or if they have the fire, but let's say it's just you. When you come across some fresh sign, especially like maybe buck sign, it's gun season, kind of getting a little excited about it and show them a little bit of that excitement that you have and why they should be excited that we're finding this kind of stuff and we're on the trail of a buck, I think is one way you can kind of capture the curiosity of a young kid of like, oh, we're actually finding where a buck's at. Like, let's see if we can go find them. Versus when you're sitting on a food plot, you're just hopefully we see some. We don't know what's going to come out here.
Yep, it's a lot different. And you're talking about you were lucky to have somebody, or blessed to have somebody, a family member that brought you out there and set you in those places and let you hunt their place. And I have to say this for any of the guys that are in my club that watch this, I've been super blessed. When my kids show up, it's a bunch of older guys. That's no other little kids. That's been in the past, maybe a couple now, but they cater to us when we show up. The kids take over, and I'm very lucky for that and blessed that I found these group of guys that treat us like this. And they're so accommodating. They let us hunt how we want to and do the things and don't put antler restrictions on us. Hey, these kids he's only killed one deer before, whatever. Let them shoot. Let them do things. We have great bucks on the property. If a spike walked out or a 6-point or whatever and my kid shot it, I won't hear a word about it, not a peep. And I understand that people are managing these great places. I'm not, I'm happy for them, but if you don't let the kids experience some form of success, they're going to lose interest very quickly. And I think, and that's another draw I have to hunting public land is you don't have to really, how to say it like this, but you don't have to listen to what other people have to say. If as long as it's abiding by the rules or the laws or whatever, you're good to go. And I don't want people to be scared to bring their kids out to hunt public land, especially during a gun hunt. You hear all these war stories about people everywhere, and it may be like that at times on certain places, but I'd say in Louisiana and Mississippi public lands, it's not like that 90% of the time. And you can, even if you ride the roads after daylight, you can find you a little nook to dip off in with your kids and get away from people. And they're there. And it's not far from the road. You don't have to hike 2 miles and have really good opportunities.
And that was one of the reasons I started hunting public land in college, because back when I, moved back down here, started going to school back here, when I went back home to Alabama and started going to school back home in college, all I had to hunt was that 80-acre farm that my uncle had, and it got to the point that I was like, man, I kind of want to go do my own thing. Like, I don't want, like, if we're like saying a standard was like we're trying to kill a 4.5-year-old. We don't have a 4.5-year-old on camera, so we're like, we're not going to kill anything, and like we weren't shooting does with rifles on food plots or anything like that. And I'm like, I'm just going to start bebop rounds in public, because we had a bunch of public around. I have a lot of public around, and just go see what it was or what it's like. And went out there, and I told the story as I'm 18 years old, driving around, and I didn't have Onyx. There's no digital map, so I could get on maybe like Google Maps, like Google Earth or something. But I had a paper map. And I got roads mixed around. It was in the middle of the night. I had just gotten off work after school. And I was driving around, and I thought I was on the public. And it was at night, and I was driving my little car. And, man, I could see all these oaks right on the side of the road, on this dirt road. I'm like, oh, this place is awesome. Like, man, I'm going to go kill one on a white oak. Like, it's bow season. And I was, like, looking at the map, thought I was on it. And then I get back, and I was talking to somebody, and I was looking back at the map. And I was talking to somebody. I didn't know Andrew at the time. And I realized, I was 2 miles away from the public. I was just on some little dirt road, way away, a good ways from the public. And finally ended up getting out there. And one of the first hits I had on public, I actually saw some deer. And it, like, re-fired me back up. Like, man, there's, like, deer out here. I can get on them. I've got tens of thousands of acres I can walk around on. I don't have to worry about screwing an area up. And just learning. To me, that got me even more excited for deer hunting. Like, I was always, as a young kid, I took to deer hunting pretty well, because my uncles were killing big bucks, and I was just fascinated by bucks. Right. Like, does were awesome. We shot some does, but like, just be able to find an antlered deer was so cool. And then when I got the public opportunity, I'm like, I've got 1,000 acres. Who knows how many bucks are out here? And I that kind of goes back to, if you can take your kids out in public, especially if you had the opportunity to kind of, on a bigger track, you can do a little bit of walking, kind of get away from some people, just instilling that to them. Like, we could not necessarily walk them to the dirt, but we can really cover some ground and try to go find some stuff and enjoy it out here.
Absolutely.
And have a good chance of potentially see some deer, maybe even have an opportunity at a buck.
Yeah. You're hunting up, like the lease I keep telling you about, it's 5 miles down the road from a big national forest. So we hunt on our lease in the morning, hunt in a good place, middle of the day. We do like everybody else at timber lease does. You go hang out at the camp house, and everybody takes a nap or drinks a beer and talks about the hunt and all that. Instead of the kids sitting there and they're poking the fire pit, sitting around waiting for 4 hours to go back in the woods, hey, jump in the truck and we ride down the road and go stomp around the forest for a while, because, quote unquote, we're not messing anything up. I wouldn't want to do that on my lease, and I don't want the guys that are in the lease to go stomp circles around where we're going to go hunt this evening, but we can go right down the road and do that. And that's a big draw. So I would really suggest anybody that has any public land within an hour of them or whatever distance, if they can utilize that just to get a kid out there. And it's hard to do the things that we talked about today on a small acreage lease with other members. And I totally understand that. But pretty much we're blessed in the South with the public land opportunities that we have. And if you can drive 30 minutes, 40 minutes and get up the road and go squirrel hunting and go walk and scout and do the things that we talked about, I'm telling you, it's worth the time. I believe it.
Now, I've got a question, especially with your oldest boy being 9. At what point, how are you trying to build him up confidence-wise and experience-wise to at some point he gets to kind of go, kind of hunt by himself?
All right, so we're there right now. He has a kid in his class that's already hunted by himself with a high-powered rifle sitting in a stand. And he looks at me and says, oh, well, so-and-so did that. And, man, good for them. And Easton may be ready this year. He may not be. And every kid is different. And that's another thing I need to stress is, look, I have my oldest son. He was ready to shoot a shotgun, shoot a rifle at a very early age, took to it, no issues, wasn't scared. You could put him behind a 12 gauge. He's ready to go. My second son, totally different kid. And that's okay. It was hard for me at first. Like, I kind of like, well, what's wrong with you? Well, why don't you want to do this? And it's hard as a dad to step back. I think my wife had to step in at that time and say, he's not ready. It's okay. And it's every kid is different. You can't say, oh, well, by the time they're 9 years old, they'll be ready. Or by the time they're 14 years old, they need their permit or this or that. Every kid is different. I've met grown men that I work with that we invite them out on a hunt, and they'll walk around with their gun off safety because they don't know any better. My 9-year-old, if I had him out here in the yard with a gun right now, straight up or straight down, it's going to be on safety. And after he shoots, he don't even have to think about it. He subconsciously puts it back on safety because he's had a gun in his hand his whole life. So the question is, like, how are we preparing to make that next step? I don't know if you want to get into this right this second, but I really want to share some of the things that if somebody's listening to this and they want to get their kid out there, a couple of little things that I've done as far as equipment-wise that I've found that will help kids be more successful. Or one thing in particular is the shotgun thing. We talk about squirrel hunting a lot. You bring a kid out there with 22, you're wasting your time. It's trying to find a rest in between shots and all these things. It's really hard. I have a Charles Daly 20 gauge. It's a little youth model. It's very short. It's cheap. I think it was $250, under $300 for this little Charles Daly shotgun. It came drilled and tapped, ready for a sight. And at the time, I said, well, look, I'll take this little gun and I'll put a Burris fast fire little, sight on it for turkey hunting. Well, what I didn't realize is that sight has been the best thing that ever happened to us as far as dove hunting, squirrel hunting, stuff like that, because a kid, it's hard for them to put their face on the gun and look down the bead. And whenever you're able to pick, even for a kid, that's any person starting hunting, whenever you're able to throw the gun up and just look at the red dot and put it on it and squeeze the trigger, your success is going to be tenfold over. So any dad that's wanting to get started, even if the gun doesn't come drilled and tapped, you can bring it to any gunsmith and tell them, even if you don't even know what you're talking about, watch a YouTube video, I want to get my gun drilled and tapped, and then put a sight similar to that on the top, and even if it's a red dot or anything like that, it will increase your odds tenfold by getting a kid to be able to hit what they're shooting at with a shotgun, in my opinion. So that's a big thing right there.
No, that's such a good point. And so you're talking about the whole red dot for,
Sure.
Whether it's squirrels, whether it's waterfowl, wing shooting, anything. I've done that quite a bit, dove hunting. It's actually a blast. But no, I could see that being such an advantage because, again, a kid, if you can shoulder that shotgun, it feels okay for you, your face. You got to think how much smaller a child's head is. Absolutely. And like their facial structure. They can't get their cheek on the gun and still see over the top of the receiver of the shotgun. Sure. So they're going to have to raise your head up. And again, it's going to be so hard for them to line it up. You put the red dot on there. As long as they can see that dot and they can have their head anywhere. As long as they see it, they can shoot it.
Imagine the first time they get recoil out of a shotgun and your face is down on the gun. You get recoil and it pops you in the face. Do you think your kid's going to put his head down on and then if he's trying to look at a bead and he picks his head up and he's going to shoot over the target every single time. So the red dot has been a game changer for us. It's a couple $100. It's an investment. It's so worth it. It'll last you forever. It's huge. I can't stress the emphasis on red dot any bigger, but.
How do you handle specifically shooting firearms with the kids, ear protection and with hearing protection, but also them associating the bang of the gun going off to recoil?
Sure.
How do you kind of work around that with your kids?
Yep. So, of course, they walk around pellet guns and BB guns around here all the time. But whenever we pull out the shotguns or rifles, if we're shooting at a stationary target, and I'm not saying this is the right way, but if we're shooting targets, if we're going to be shooting over and over again at a fixed object, it's not a wild animal. I have a Caldwell, these little earmuffs they wear where you can still hear what's going on, the shot. is protected by it, we put those on. If we're out in the woods squirrel hunting, and I have, like I had today, I had 3 kids with me. We're walking around squirrel hunting. Whoever the shooter is, they're behind the gun. They don't have ear protection on. And I'm not saying we probably should, but we don't. The other 2 kids got their fingers in their ears. And look, I have a 5-year-old out there with us, and whenever my oldest son threw the shotgun up, but I don't even say anything, the other kid just stuck his finger in his ears. Like, we've done this so many times, it's not even like a question, but should we probably take that a little bit serious? Yeah, we should. But that's kind of where we're at right now.
Well, and kind of where I was getting at that more so is just them getting through the whole idea of a recoil or the kick.
Sure.
Remember as a kid, we always called it the kick. I mean,
Yeah,
that
that
gun's got a lot of kick on
All
it.
right, so we have I have a family heirloom crack barrel 20 gauge that's nicknamed the Mule Kicker, which I'm sure everybody has one. I have a crack barrel 410. All of my kids are scared to shoot either one of those. We've realized or come to find that automatic shotguns have the least recoil, and even at a very young age, I have automatic 410, and then I have an automatic 20 gauge, 2 of them, and we quickly moved up from the 410 to the 20 gauge. Just felt like we had longer range, better opportunities, and really more shot sizes and availability to even just go buy shells. But having, like a Remington Model 1100, you can shoot it holding one hand and take the shot. A crack barrel, it's not like that. So a lot of time you see dads that don't know any better, they want to just like, oh, my kid's getting started, I'm going to go buy him a little crack barrel shotgun. You're feeling the full recoil. There's no gas operated. There's nothing, I'm not a gunsmith, but there's nothing to operate to take a lot of the recoil away. And I feel like a small automatic shotgun has really helped with the recoil. And I'll walk out in the yard, and if a kid's scared to shoot, I'll say, watch me shoot it one time. And I'll hold it out with one hand and shoot it at the ground or in the air or whatever. And they quickly go, oh, well, okay, I'm not scared anymore. And I'll do the same thing I have a little crack barrel 243 rifle, which I know that kind of goes against what I just said about the crack barrel thing, but I had a 243, and the first time we brought the kids out, they were shooting the 22, and I made the mistake. I said, let me go check it and make sure it's on. And when you shoot a high-power rifle, it's 10 times as loud. They all kind of, see my eyes get real big, and I'm like, okay, buddy, jump on here. And he's kind of, he's tensed up. And I said, watch me shoot it one time. And I cracked the barrel, stuck it, and held out one hand and shot it at the ground. And you're like, okay, I'm good after that. So I'm just showing them, and I guess having the right tools, but also just showing them that it's not that big of a deal. It's really not.
Yeah. Also, I'm interested in this specifically with rifle. Again, you get boys all different ages. They're all different sizes,
Sure.
too. They came in here earlier
Sure.
before we get started. How do you handle them learning how to shoot through a scope at different ages? And again, older boy versus like your younger son and all that kind of stuff. How do you kind of work through that scenario?
Sure. A huge thing is I have just a little cheap pellet gun that has a scope on it. And today we were riding around shooting birds, turtles, whatever, with the youngest one out of the golf cart, just riding around, letting him shoot. And one thing that he's not hitting anything, but one thing is just target acquisition. You see a squirrel out in the yard and he throws up and he can't find it in the scope. Well, if you don't practice at a young age, when you get to an adult, if you're in the woods or the deer's moving or whatever, target acquisition. Y'all been hunting long enough where you can just you see something in the woods, you can throw up and you're on it immediately. A new hunter, they got to throw up and they find it in the scope and pulling the power in and out and doing all the different things. Shooting up just time, gun in the hand, time in the woods, time, with a pellet gun, just let them shoot over and over and over again. It's invaluable. It really is.
Well, that's a good point. Kind of, it's almost like if you take somebody out that hasn't shot any kind of rifle with a scope ever, or just not a lot of experience, you get them to throw up on something real quick, and they're like dancing behind the scope because they're trying to set the eye. They don't understand about the eye relief, and they're like getting too close, too far away. And that's one thing. I don't know if you pay attention, because this is my thought, because I'm a scope and kind of gun fanatic when it comes to like getting different combinations put together. But like a scope that has a very long eye relief for a kid, so the kid doesn't have to worry about getting super tight to that scope and potentially getting scoped. I think this would be something that would be such an advantage. And that's something that I think a lot of people, when they go buy a scope, they look at price over the features of the scope. And on every scope you buy, again, like Vortex, great example, they have price line from $120 all the way up to as much as you want to spend on a rifle scope. And finding and looking at the specs on it of what the eye relief is, and looking at something that's over 3 inches eye relief, so the kid can get his face far enough back where he can comfortably get on the gun, but he doesn't have to get real tight to it to keep him from having the opportunity of potentially getting scoped? Because did you ever get scoped as a kid?
I did.
Okay. As any of your boys get scoped?
I got scoped as an adult.
Oh, okay.
After hunting for a very long time, and I was sitting in a tripod stand on a timber lease hunting, and somebody let me hunt their stand on a road, looking down both ways, and the shooting rail was super low on it, way lower than I would have expected. So I'm sitting there, and a coyote pops out 100 yards, and I mean, I didn't even think about it. I just spun around, and when I went to go shoot, I realized it was real low, so I had to crunch down and get down in the gun, and when I did, I got real close to it, and I was shooting a 300 short mag, and when I did, that sucker popped back and hit me, and I saw stars. And it wasn't until I got out of the stand and blood dripping down, walked over to even see if I hit it. I mean, it was immediately I could care less what I shot. I thought it knocked me out. So yes, I've been there. It's terrible, but I didn't even know anything about that eye relief stuff you just said. I know it sounds really basic, but I really didn't know anything about it.
Well, a lot of deer hunters specifically don't pay attention to that kind of thing. But like every scope, not all scopes are the same, and you can look at the specs on it. It'll tell you what the eye relief is, and 3+ inches is really, really good. You start getting one that's under 3 inches, especially because the thing is that's on the lowest power. As you at least especially on more economical scopes, as you zoom in and it's a 3x9, if you turn it to 9, you got to get closer to it. So that's why you want the most eye relief possible. So if you're trying to take a longer shot, you're trying to get the kid or someone or yourself to zoom in to a higher power, you're going to have to get closer. So the longer the eye relief, the farther away from the scope you can sit.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say too about finding something in the scope, I don't think I've told any kids this, but other new hunters that I brought out to the woods, one thing I notice people do a lot when it comes to rifles is like, let's say there's a squirrel up in a tree or whatever. They're like bringing the rifle up and then looking for the squirrel. I'm like, no, look at the squirrel and bring the rifle to where you're looking. That's what you shouldn't put your eye in the scope and then be looking for the squirrel. Like, never take your eye off of it. Just bring the rifle right up to where it is, and you should be aligned. You might have to adjust a little bit, but I had to tell that to Mike because I noticed Mike did that the first time I ever brought him squirrel. Mike is my stepdad. First time I ever brought him squirrel hunting, man, there was a squirrel timbering above us, and like the squirrel is like way over here, and I'm like, all right, you see him? And I look back at Mike, and he's like over here, and he's like in the scope looking. I'm like, no, he's back there. And he was just, he wasn't like looking over the scope and trying to get adjusted or anything. So that might be something helpful to tell kids. I don't know.
Yeah, and then also kind of like in regards to like the scope and everything, I think a lot of people, because I used to do this and I've learned this from mistakes and missing opportunities, always having your scope at the lowest setting, lowest power possible, so it gives, especially a kid, but even a new hunter, the wide, and even experienced hunter, you're hunting a roadbed or a power line or something like that, deer could pop out at 10 yards, he can pop out at 300 yards. It's a lot easier to zoom in on that deer than have to back it out and you can't find the deer. Even when you pull the gun up, it's just fur because he's 10 yards from you. And especially for a kid, if you're hunting a food plot or anything kind of open where that deer could pop out into a bunch of different places, having it zoomed out, once the kid's on it, probably could just reach over, crank the scope down a little bit, get him a little more comfortable, get him steady and let him shoot. Do you ever use any like shooting rest or like a one that I've used is like a bog death grip tripod that holds the gun for him?
Yeah, so right before, it seems like everybody has that now, and I guess several years ago I bought a Caldwell. It has a tripod at the bottom and it looks like a lead sled at the top, and I have one of those. It doesn't extend high enough to where when you're sitting in a box stand, to where it's not tall enough to where when you're sitting in a box stand you can just lock the gun in it. I'd love to get one. I keep saying I am, and I kind of just push it by the wayside. Most of the time when I'm hunting in a box stand with a kid, what I do is I put the gun in the window. When it's time to shoot, I bring a shooting stick, just a single shooting stick, and I'll brace the back with that. And if the kid's on it or whatever, he not only does he have the gun on the front rail, he also has it braced in the back, so it's real steady like that. But yes, that Caldwell shooting stick, it's really short, has a tripod base, and it has like a lead sled, if people are familiar with that. And I bring that when we're turkey hunting and when we're deer hunting, because my 9-year-old, a lot of time we're hunting in the woods. There's a little thing I want to tell you about the shotgun thing, about deer hunting with a shotgun. But whenever we're hunting with a little youth model 243, he can't freehand that. So we bring that, and wherever I think the deer, we're hunting a lane or we're hunting a hub or a bottom or anything where I think the shot's going to be, I get him situated out in front of me, sitting in a small turkey chair real low to the ground. I have a little Primo's fold-out blind that goes around us, and I have him set up on the gun facing down where the shot's going to be. And he can turn about 90 degrees. So if one comes out far left, far right, honestly, I'll reach over and grab the gun, spin around and shoot it. I've done it before where we have that agreement. Look, hey, before this happens, if a deer comes out behind us, we're rednecks. We're going to shoot. We're not going to let this deer get by us if a buck comes out. He's good with it because he knows I'm getting him the first shot. But no, I help him I help him as much as I can, and having that gun in the fixed position to where all he has to do is, if I see a deer coming, all he has to do is turn and fix and get in position. He's killed deer doing it. And I have one more thing with we also use it for turkey hunting. A lot of time I'll bring a decoy. If I'm hunting by myself, I won't hunt with a decoy, but bring a kid, turkey comes in there. When he gets to the spot where he hears the calling, he's looking, he better see something. And I'll bring a little Jake decoy or hen decoy or whatever and walk out there 15 yards, stick in the ground. And I'll kind of have it pointing at the decoy. And now that he's getting a little bit older, he can actually just reach up and pick the gun out and spin around if he has to. But whenever he was 6, 7 years old or whatever, in which we didn't kill many turkeys in that time, I'm not trying to pretend we did, but I had it kind of in a fixed position to where he could just kind of lean into it and push it around and shoot. And that made a huge difference, because if you think a kid's going to be able to free-hand it or put it on his knee or whatever, you're going to be disappointed, because we've been there. It's worth the effort to pack it with you. Pack him a little chair, like a little turkey chair, sits real low to the ground. And I have a lone wolf hand climber top that I bring with me. So it's just a little seat with a strap. And I'll put him facing on this side of the tree, and I'll sit on the back side of the tree, and I'll just put the strap around the tree and sit. So I'm kind of more elevated position above him. I can see what's coming a little bit better and face kind of away. And then I'll have his chair. So I look like a pack mule going through the woods, all the stuff I have between my bag and shooting sticks and gun and weapons. But yeah, it's pretty interesting.
So, well, one other thing I was going to mention about talking about rifles, and this is something that we had experienced growing up. When I started deer hunting, when I shot my first deer, I think I was 10, 12, something like that. And me and my brother were hunting the shooting house with the blind, whatever, box blind shooting house with my uncle. And we were shooting his rifle, 7 mag, Remington 7 mag, with a big old muzzle brake on it. Okay. And we had shot the gun a little bit, but it's always with ear muffs, some kind of ear protection. We didn't have it in the blind, okay, in that shooting house, which we should have. And one thing, and I realized this later on because I shoot a muzzle brake on my gun now, but it is so loud, and especially with a kid, if they're using hearing protection when they're shooting at the range, that's fine because, yeah, it's helping with the recoil. But if they're shooting like a larger caliber, like I want to say a 270 and above, 270, 308, 7 mag, 300, if you want to punch your kid, or even a 30-30, which I don't know any 30-30s that really have a muzzle brake on. The muzzle brake's fantastic for recoil reduction, but it's so loud that, again, that could start a little kid. And it kind of goes back to, shooting a very light caliber that's still super effective. Like I know plenty of people that have had their kids shoot deer with a 223 and just drop deer no problem, but like a 243, something like that, not worry about putting a muzzle brake on. They're just worried about, a gun that they can handle, doesn't have a lot of recoil, but again, it's not crazy loud with the muzzle brake, because the muzzle brake makes it so much louder for the guy behind the gun.
Right. And the 243 gets a lot of kickback. You'll hear people say it's almost like the 6.5 stuff you'll hear online and stuff. Obviously, it'll kill a deer if you hit him in the right spot. I started out with reduced recoil rounds. I thought I was doing the best thing. Hey, I'm going to get him some Hornady reduced recoil rounds. Got out there, got situated, shot the deer, and got lucky on the first one that we killed. Perfect heart shot, no issues. Now, in the second deer, didn't put the best shot on it, and I quickly realized that I think it would have been a fatal shot with any other caliber or maybe a different bullet. And I started really doing my research, which I should have done before, and I just horror story after horror story of reduced recoil rounds. And that, I'm not a gunsmith, not a super crazy gun guy, but I quickly said, okay, well, let me just try some different bullets. And I went and bought some Hornady SSTs, I think they are, and 90 grain, and I went out there and shot them. They shot exactly the same at 110 yards. They were shooting, with 1-inch groups, just factory ammo. You couldn't ask for just out of the box accuracy. And we went out there, and I was shooting out the lead sled, and I was like, man, I really can't feel any difference. Shot it on the hood of my truck, couldn't feel a difference. I never told the kid that we weren't shooting reduced recoil rounds. He never knew the difference. And the knockdown power after the next couple deer he killed, I said, man, look, my main hunting rifle is a big 300 short mag rifle, blah, 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 which is great for certain situations. But a lot of time I'm hunting public land, slipping around, going deep, hunting out of a climbing stand, awkward positions, awkward shots. It's nice having that little youth model single shot rifle. I pack it a lot. I really do. And I've killed several bucks with it. And, man, I ain't having any issues with it. So I think that's a, Chevy, Ford, Dodge argument people are about calibers, but I haven't had any issues with it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome to see. Now, also, as your boys get a little bit older, okay, and you got 3 of them, is there anything else, like when are you going to implement, or what's your thought process about implementing getting elevated in a tree?
Sure.
How do you think because again, you're probably not there quite yet.
No, we're not.
How are you wanting to implement it? Is it going to be a climber? Is it going to be a lock on and sticks? How are you going to go over the safety? Like, what is your thoughts there?
I think the knee-jerk reaction, just for ease, as far as me having to help a kid into the woods and being mobile, hunting public land, or the way we like to hunt. Yeah, we like to hunt box hands and stuff, but my kid's quick to, if they're not moving on, if we're not hunting some special lease where you just see a pile of deer every time you go hunting, he'll quickly realize and go, let's go hunt the other places where we see all the deer. And that's the hard way to hunt, where you're mobile and you're moving and finding sign and hunting in areas that there aren't stands and you need to be in elevated positions. The knee-jerk reaction is say, put him in a saddle. I did the saddle thing for a solid year, tried my best, and I'm actually sold my saddle. It just wasn't for me. I'm probably the vast minority in that, but it just wasn't for me. I didn't have good luck with it. I like to bow hunt a lot, and I felt like my shot was off. Maybe I didn't practice enough, but I felt like I was canting my bow whenever I would shoot, and then whenever I would hear a deer coming behind me, I would move my body a lot, and I would get picked off. And I'm not saying I never get picked off, but very rarely am I sitting in a lock-on stand, or I'm sitting in a climber and I hear a deer coming behind me. I can use the tree kind of to peek around, and deer don't really see me as much. But whenever I was hanging off the tree, if I didn't get super high, which that's a lot of people, that's a new thing, is hunt as low as possible. These deer around here, man, it feels like they're walking around looking up in the trees. And if I just turn my body just a little bit, them old does just whip up there and gone. So anyway, I kind of lost confidence in that, so I got away from it. But hunting in a saddle, kind of circling back to that would probably have to be the way. And it's just so safe. And I mean, if everybody knows that already has one. If not, do your research. It's the safest way to get in a tree. I mean, you're wearing your safety harness. I mean, very rarely do you hear of an accident that had something to do with a saddle. And when it does, people can admit that it was something that they did wrong.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Also, okay, then how are you going to introduce archery to him, or have you already introduced archery?
We've already done that. Yeah,
okay.
We've already done that. So I have my good buddy Garrett Ramsey. I give him a shout out. Came out here, and he's done several things for us. And he set up a little chronograph and let my little boy shoot through. We have I think it's a diamond, I want to say, and I wish I would have done research on that before. But anyway, it goes from real light, like 15 pounds, up to 70 pounds. Super adjustable. It's a good little bow. He's shooting out in the yard. My oldest son is. My middle son likes to shoot a crossbow because my papa and my dad shot a crossbow. So my middle son, whatever papa says, he hung the moon. So he wants to shoot a crossbow. So look, I'm not somebody that cares what other people do, and if that's what gets kids excited, we'll go out there and shoot the crossbow. Cool, whatever. Do I like it? No, honestly, I'm not a big crossbow guy. But if that's what they like to do, we'll do it. But yeah, the archery thing it's a whole nother level. And my oldest son, he was hoping to shoot with the bow this year. He got it for Christmas last year, shot it all spring, and the poundage isn't enough yet to where he's strong enough to pull it back and be ethical. And he knows that. When it got real close to the season, he's like, I'm not going to be able to deer hunt with this year. I was like, no, but next year you should be good. And he's like, okay. And I really thought that was going to be a big kickback, but it really wasn't,
Yeah. Well, it's also for something to look forward to.
Sure.
Yeah, and be like, hey, man, listen, you get a little bit bigger, get a little stronger. Like, listen, you're going to be shooting deer with a bow and get that experience again, trying to shoot a deer close.
Yep.
So that's super interesting. But also, when it comes to kids, how do you overcome, I'm not going to say failures, but like when a hunt doesn't go right, how do you still keep it fun for them?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can tell war stories all day long about the good stuff that happened, but I got fivefold the stories of bad stuff that happened. And just really prepping before you go into the hunt, explaining that how low the expectations are. And I wrote a couple notes in my phone when I was riding around thinking about this interview, and one of the things I said was no expectations. And telling a kid that, hey, yeah, we are going squirrel hunting, but it might be windy. It might be hot. We might have somebody come walk in on us. We might not kill anything, but we're going to have fun. And setting those expectations, same thing with the deer thing. Hey, look, we're deer hunting in the South, and we don't have a super awesome place. Good chance we're not going to see anything. You cool with that? You're not going to cry, right? Because, seriously, as silly as that sounds, hey, I go 2 or 3 hunts in a row. I'm spoiled. I want to see a deer. I want to see a lot of deer. And you ask people that hunt with me, if I'm not seeing something or shooting something every third or fourth hunt, I think, the world's ending. But setting those expectations with a kid, like, hey, look, we're going to miss them. We're going to shoot them and not find them. Setting expectations as far as being realistic and not waiting until the time you missed and they turn around with those big crocodile eyes and go, oh my God, what just happened? Yes, those things happen, and it's part of it, man.
One other thing, did you introduce your kids to shooting rifles with a 22, or did you go straight to a larger caliber?
So I have a friend of mine turned me on to a 22 with a suppressor, and I have one, and we were shooting out here in the yard today, and it is so fun. I actually have a little cheap, I'm drawing blank on the name, Bram. It's a bolt action suppressor, and whoever don't know a whole lot about them, if you can shoot an automatic just fine, and it's super quiet, but when you have a bolt action, it's a lot quieter because you don't hear the slide going back and forth. All you're actually hearing is the firing pin hit the bullet and the bullet hitting wherever it's going. It's quieter than a Benjamin pump pellet gun. That's how quiet this 22 is, and with suppressed rounds, of course. And we got them out there in the yard, and that's another way. It's kind of like they shot the pellet gun a lot, but when they shot the 22, in their mind, they're shooting a rifle. They don't know whether it's a 22 or it's a 300. There's no difference to them. I'm shooting a 22 versus I'm shooting a rifle. And so we kind of eased them into that with the suppressor. And I think that's another good trick to getting people. I don't have you hear about people making these AR platform guns for kids and put suppressors on it and stuff. That's awesome. I haven't got there yet. I'm not a super freak gun guy. I've said that over and over again, but I think that would be a great way to get them into it. And I've heard of real little kids not being scared to shoot it because there's no recoil. It's automatic, like we talked about earlier. There's no recoil. It's quiet. You can shoot in front of them and they won't be scared of it. But yeah, I would definitely suggestion I would make for sure.
Yeah, I was interested in getting a suppressor on my deer rifle for my daughter to be able to use one day, which she's a long way off. But I bought the gun with that in mind. I was like, one day she's going to shoot this gun. It's a 7mm 08, so it's a smaller round, less recoil, and it kills a buddy.
Sure.
Oh my gosh, it's a great round. Now, it's interesting what you said about how them shooting pellet guns versus the 22, like they know they're shooting a rifle. And there's definitely something to that. Like you can smell the powder, you pick up the shell casings or whatever. I wanted to kick it back a little bit earlier. We brought up, when is it the right time to like kind of let your kids go venture out on their own and do stuff? And we looked at it from the deer perspective, like, is your son able to take out a high-powered rifle? Like maybe he's not quite ready yet. But do you let your kids go tromp around with a 22 or a pellet gun or anything like that?
Pellet gun nonstop. And I'm kind of, and I don't want to say like I would just freelance, do whatever you want to do. They're not an adult. When I have friends over, no. This is one kid at a time. I don't let all three of them take off through the yard with a pellet gun. This is one kid at a time. He's hunting an area where he can kind of shoot whatever direction he wants to. He's not going to hurt anything. And this is after watching them for hours and hours and hours and shooting over and over again, and just knowing that they shoot and subconsciously put the gun back on safety and know how to load the gun themselves and how to pump it and how to do the little things. And the gun needs to be pointing straight up or straight down, not side to side, waving at people. And so I don't think there's an age to that. It's really, you have to know your kid. I really believe that because every kid's different. I've met guys and been around their kids and stuff where they're 12, 13, 14 years old and they wouldn't let their kid out of their sight with a gun and they have to be with them. And probably rightfully so. You know your kid better than anybody else. But if you have a kid that's been blessed and has the opportunity, which most people don't, to be able to get home from school and run inside and change your school shoes, throw on rubber boots, still in their school uniform, and hit the woods with a pellet gun every afternoon, yeah, your kid can probably do it a little bit sooner. It's just the opportunity they were given,
Yeah, I feel like the pellet gun is such a good. We talked about it a little bit, but like, what a great. I mean, dude, the classic Red Ryder BB guns, baby. Yeah. I mean, like, how much fun could you have with that?
I got some horror stories. That was my first. My parents.
I got some good Red Ryder stories.
When I was we didn't have we had some higher powered stuff we were shooting at each other with as kids. We had pellet wars. It was terrible.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, I've been hit too many times. But yeah, we weren't that responsible as the kids. But my parents, they wouldn't let me have a firearm. Again, my parents, like when I was growing up, they didn't have, mom or dad didn't have a gun. So it wasn't until I was I was probably maybe 10. Talked to my parents to get me a 22. Had to write them like a little essay, whatever. And I had my uncles kind of tell me like what I need to put into it, like what I need to write down. Anyways, but we had these little, I think they were made by Remington, these pellet guns. I say pellet guns. They shot BBs, but they were like 800 feet per second. And I'd go shoot squirrels in the backyard. And I'd call my uncles about, hey, how do I butcher this thing, cook this thing? They'd talk to me over the phone like, oh yeah, you got to cut them here, cut them there. Didn't have YouTube or anything like that. Go shoot doves in the backyard when it was not in season. One of my uncles was like, shoot them on the roost tree, and Uncle would be like, you shot a dove, and he'd get a little upset. He's like, why'd you do that? He's like, well, if you shot it, I'll tell you how to breast it out and everything. He told me on the phone how to do it, and botched it, whatever. But it was what it was. But learning to shoot those pellet guns and actually learning, to be honest, how to kill squirrels and stuff with that pellet gun iron sights taught me a lot about like trigger control as a young kid and like how to be able to like handle yourself, because a pellet gun, I mean, like any firearm, it's so easy to get that shot off if you don't have a really good trigger pull. But it was also fun being able to kind of run around. You know, we had a little 7-acre property. It was a little farm that we lived on when I was that age, and we were able to go out and do that. But again, there were some times we were a little mischief. I got three other siblings. There's 4 of us under the age of 5, so we're all within 5 years of each other.
Sure.
We take those pellet guns out, get about 100 yards apart from each other, start lobbing BBs at each other. And anyway.
Well, to me, that's kind of the beauty of a pellet gun, though, is because even when you're doing dumb stuff as a kid, you know, it's not like you're cracking 22s at each other.
Big difference.
It'd be a different story.
Well, and see, I got my first bow around that same time, probably probably 10 years old or so. My uncles gave me, he bought me, I think it was Michael, he hasn't been on the podcast yet, but bought me this little tiny compound, and it probably wasn't like 15, 20 pounds, and he had a pendulum, he put a pendulum sight on there, okay? Now, I'm of a generation, we never shot pendulums. We all, like, I don't think, you probably, you're not old enough to shoot pendulums either. And dude, I couldn't hit nothing with it. But dude got me a little 3D deer target, whatever, to shoot at it and just have fun with it. And then kind of grew up, and then I got hand down bows from them as I got a little bit older, at 12, 13 years old, and so on. So, and all my hunting clothes all came from my uncles. Dude, I was wearing stuff that was hip back in like the late 70s. Okay, oversized bibs and everything.
It's probably back in style now.
Everything was cotton. It froze to death in it. Oversized boots. But that's one thing. Kind of going back to like kids, like getting cold on the stand. Yep. Some of the most memorable stories I remember as a kid was freezing my butt off in a tree stand because I didn't have anything that fit. I'd sweat walking in. I have everything wearing in, all these giant boots, and just sweat in them. Feet freeze to death. But it was like spending that time with my uncles, going out and just hunting with them, and just having those experiences were fun. But definitely kind of going back to like your style of kind of letting the kids kind of walk, like you're kind of hunting through the woods. You're always staying kind of warm. I think there's a huge advantage to take a kid like that.
Absolutely. And talk about the feet thing. Anybody that's been hunting for a long time, say anybody, most people, that's their number one complaint is their feet. And there's 100 different ways you'll hear about people wrapping their feet, changing socks, boots, this, blah, 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 blah. I have found Arctic Shield boot covers saves the day. You can't walk with them. Anybody that's watching this, listening to this, doesn't know anything about them. You get to your position, whether you're in the stand, you're on the ground, blah, blah, blah. You carry them with you. When you get to your spot, you slip them right over whatever you have on. If you really want to get razzle-dazzle, you throw a hot hand in there with it, and it will save the day. And because kids, you look for kids' options on rubber boots, there's very little options. And before I get too far, the options are so bad that a lot of times we would want to be walking and stuff like that. And during squirrel season, a lot of time I bring my kids in tennis shoes, just old tennis shoes, let them walk, whatever's dry, normally this time of the year, October, before the rain start. And a lot of times I'll have them in tennis shoes just because they can't walk far in rubber boots. It's like walking with 5-gallon buckets tied to your feet. Well, the other day we were at an expo, and I ran to the light boot booth, and I got my oldest son a pair of light boots just to try them out. And you want to talk about a game changer, cliche as it is, but I'm telling you, it's unbelievable how nice those boots have been. But having cold feet and having the right equipment for your kids that's a big one. I mean, hand warmers out the butt, but having the boot covers, I would definitely invest. Worth it.
Yeah, and they're $30, $35 for a pair of them.
Yes.
I have some, and talk about not running in them. Second Iowa buck I shot a couple of years ago on late season muzzleloader hunt. He dropped, dude. I took off running, and I forgot I had him on, and dude, it looked like a newborn fawn running. Dude, I'm like slipping and busting my butt, and finally I kicked him off and like tore off, and the deer was just laying there. But anyway, it's just that's a great option. And again, because I think the small size they may make them maybe like a 7 or something like that. But for a kid, that's perfect. A little oversized. Throw a hot hand in there.
They'll grow into them.
Yeah, my kids. I buy all the same size. I buy a large because whenever we first started, I only had one pair. And we went. It was cold. Hey, you're wearing them. I mean, I don't have a budget to just buy a whole bunch of them. And slowly but surely, once I realized, hey, these do work, and they want to have them. Each Christmas, I'd buy one, and we all have the exact same size, so it doesn't matter which ones we grab. Not saying the other ones don't work better, but we started out, they were wearing the big ones that were too big, and they never complained about their feet being cold ever again. So, Take it or leave
That's
it.
that's a great tip for this episode.
That's a hot tip.
Yeah,
hot
that-
tip
that is
for
a good-
hot feet for warm toes.
That's pretty slick. We've talked a lot about your oldest boy. Now,
Sure.
how old is your
9,
youngest?
7, and 5.
Okay. So now let's talk
Sure.
about the one that's 5.
Sure,
What are
sure.
you doing with him right now?
Yeah. So yep. Well, that's gonna be
Especially after the crash course with the first two. Or
Yeah.
do anything different with the
Sure.
with your youngest.
the pressure is not on. I'll say that. And like today, we were walking around and we were shooting squirrels a little bit. I get to hunt right here in the yard, but it's a very limited area. We have 15 acres, and the neighbor lets us hunt just like another acre or two on his place. That's the only woods that we have. And so imagine we're going out squirrel hunting. I didn't just want to just blitz through the middle of all of it. I want to kind of just stage hunt my way through it so we didn't burn it out. I wanted to kind of slow down, start at the front. And if we could shoot a squirrel here, move up a couple hundred yards, shoot another one, and try to maximize the property. Well, we got to the first spot this morning, killed one, and my oldest son shot several times. I had my youngest son hunting so it was my oldest one and my youngest one with me. My dad was in the back with my middle son, so he was shooting. The little one, of course, wasn't shooting. He was just following. He's our retriever. So you shoot a squirrel, he runs and jumps on it. Look, if it's still alive, he'll stomp on him, sling him up against a tree. It's pretty barbaric what he does. It's pretty funny, though. But anyway, that's how he gets hooked into it. But no, look, so we killed a squirrel. We walked a little bit farther. So we're standing there, and I didn't want to just blitz through the area, so I'm trying to stand there and see if another squirrel's going to start moving. And while we're I said, let's just sit down on the ground for a second. We sit there. We weren't there for 2 minutes. And he said, my back hurts. And I said, do you want to get up and move around? He goes, mm-hmm. And I was like, all right. So he just wanted to get up and walk around. And it's just reiterating the thing about making a kid sit there. He's 5. He don't know why we're sitting there. He don't know that there's probably a squirrel right here that's about to start moving. All he knows is we were moving, we're having fun shooting stuff, and now when you're making me sit down, I'm not seeing nothing. So, as a parent, you need to think about, if I bring my kid hunting and he says, I want to move, it's time to move. If he says, I want to go ride the four-wheeler, it's time to ride the four-wheeler, or it's time to go, or I want to go walk around or do whatever. Do it. I mean, because if not, imagine if I would have said, no, you're going to sit right here and you're going to be still and be quiet. We're going hunting again tomorrow. I'm loading him up and we're going hunting again in the morning. Do you think he's going to want to go if I made him be quiet, made him be still, don't mess up our hunt because we're having fun out here, and it's big, so.
Going to Jacob's point a second ago, is there anything with your first 2 boys that you kind of learned that you're looking out for with your third boy?
Yeah, just real low expectations. That's the biggest thing. When just like anybody that was good at sports or good at hunting or whatever, you have your kid and you watch all these other people and you look online, you'll see these little girls and little boys killing these huge bucks and turkeys and all this stuff. And I was like, we're going to do all that. I mean, that's going to be easy. We're going to just get out there and just do all of it. Having really humble yourself down and lower your expectations and realize that, hey, if you do that, great. If you don't, it's okay too. It's not just for Facebook likes and it's not just for clout and all the stuff that comes with it. Really make it about the kid. And it's hard to do. It's you think like, oh, it's just so easy. The deer's right there. Just squeeze the trigger, or the squirrel or whatever. And really stepping back and going, why are we here? You know what I mean? And one recent podcast I listened to, Bobby Worthington said at the end, he was getting, Bobby's an older man, real respected. I like a lot of things he has to say. And he says, I'm at the end of my, towards the end of my life, and I feel like I've appreciated this sport and I've learned so much. And I feel like if I don't pass this along a certain kind of way, then I've kind of failed. And I'm not saying that I'm older and I've done all these things, but if I don't pass this joy down and I don't make it to where my kids like it, then what's the worth? You know what I mean? What is, if you can't pass it along and one day I'm 60 and I'm watching them pack their kids around the yard, they may decide to go a different direction, but I want to be able to look back one day and say, I didn't burn them out. I didn't push them too hard, whatever. And yeah, my oldest one, I probably got to the point to where I could have done that. Luckily, he took to it, and every kid's different. You might bring your kids and do all the right things, and your kids say, Dad, I just don't want to go anymore. And you have to say, that's okay. Because they may circle back to it when they're a teenager, adult, whatever. But if you burn them out too early and you say, no, we're going because we have to, whatever, then you're going to regret it.
Yeah. Man, that's powerful. That really is. That's good stuff. And I think a lot of people are going to get a lot out of this conversation. Now, if you just had to, what would be? I think I already know what you're going to say, but like your number one tip for people trying to get their kids into the outdoors.
Sure.
What is just number one, fundamental thing that they should know about it?
As simple as it's going to sound, stop overthinking it. I do share people that follow me or are friends with me on Facebook and the groups or whatever. I like to share stuff that my kids do nowadays. If they catch a fish, if they kill squirrels, whatever. And I promise y'all, it's not just for like, oh, look what we did, but I really want to encourage other people to do it. And I'll be at this kid's school or be at a sports game. People stop me and say, oh, what caliber shotgun do your kids shoot, or where do y'all do some of that at? And not like they're trying to steal my spot. It's like they're interested and they're like, dang, that's pretty cool. I mean, they may hunt a little bit, deer hunt and stuff, but how do you bring a 7-year-old out there and let them actually be the one to shoot and get that done? Don't overthink it, and start with little stuff, just whatever it takes to get y'all outside in the yard, walking a creek, doing whatever. I mean, just don't use it as an excuse. Oh, I don't have a place to go, or I don't have a boat, and I don't have these, things. I don't have a boat. I don't have this super fancy hunting club. Pay a couple $1,000s a year, which is a lot of money. I'm not pretending it's not, but it's not like I'm just have all this bougie things that it takes to bring a kid hunting. Anybody can do it. If you can go to a pawn shop, buy a $200 gun, and bring a kid out there, it's a start. And just you can, if you want to sit there and overthink it, you can overthink it to the point to where you never make it out there. So taking the first step and just getting out there is really a closing thought. Really, I mean, it's
Love it. I love it.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, sweet. I don't have kids yet, not even married yet, but hopefully at some point I'll be able to kind of walk through some of this.
You might be mentoring his kids for too long,
Yeah, I'm already Uncle Red.
Yeah,
so.
Uncle Red's going to be, helping out.
Here's one thing you're going to realize quickly is, he's going to tell, you have a daughter, right?
Yep.
You're going to tell your daughter all your war stories and all this stuff you kill and all this stuff. And my close friends, if one of them says, oh, I did this, boy, all my kids are like, oh, well, Uncle Garrett or Mr. Nick or all these other kids, they said this and they said that. It's like, I did that too. But I was the same way I was a kid. My dad had a best friend, and look, rest in peace, he's dead now. But look, anything that he said, if he hung the moon, if he said it, then it was gospel. You're going to be the same way. You watch. Anything you say, anything you do, it's going to be cloud nine, and you're going to take a backseat.
Oh, I can already see that, man. Piper loves her Uncle Red already, man.
That's coming. Good stuff.
I'm already thinking about how can I spend things to
How's he going to mess with me?
I want to say one more thing before I let y'all go out of here, and this is another opportunity thing. They got some really good hunts on I don't know about Alabama, and I know y'all have a lot of Alabama listeners, but Louisiana, Mississippi, for guys that maybe don't have the best place to bring their kids hunting, even if they have a little lease or they're trying public land or whatever, really getting the regulations, Louisiana, Mississippi, and they have youth hunting opportunity weekends on highly managed pieces of property that is best that money can buy. And maybe it's places that other people can hunt, but when you're the first chance to get out there and you're the first weekend, deer and turkeys and squirrel, now they have squirrel seasons that are youth weekends. When I'm telling, even if you're the guy that says, oh, I'd never bring my kid out there on a gun weekend, if you bring your kid out there on a youth weekend opportunity, you can have huge expanse, awesome pieces of public land to yourself for you and your kid. It's very underutilized, so that's another opportunity to get out there. And I know y'all have SOA hunts. I don't know what the opportunities are there, but we have places that are draw only in Louisiana and Mississippi, but they have 1 weekend of youth. It might only be 2 days. Stuff like that, or a week, or early hunts like that. That's a good one to take advantage of. And you can kind of stagger those out for different hunt units that might have a gun season that starts later, and this one starts earlier. Well, they have a youth weekend that's early. This one has a youth weekend that's early. If you kind of stagger those out, you might be able to hit 4 or 5 weekends in a row of just youth hunts. So that's another opportunity that's there that I think I don't hear people talking about utilizing those. You hear people talking about draw hunts, but not so much the youth opportunity that comes along with it.
Yeah, in Alabama, our SOA system has a lot of really good opportunities on some of those places for youth-specific hunts. And the cool thing is, the guys I know who've actually applied for them typically have got them. Versus, like, if you try to draw it yourself to go hunt, it may take you 4 or 5, 6 years to draw those places. So it gives you an opportunity not only to take your kid, but you're kind of scouting it. So hopefully, if you ever already it in the future, you kind of already have a lay of the land before you ever get there. Yeah. So that's awesome. Well, Chase, listen, greatly appreciate letting us come down here and do this episode with you. Hopefully, all the listeners out there and viewers, you got some really good information out of it. I know I did. Again, don't have kids quite yet, but also kind of look at this from like the outside perspective end of what can we all do to make this a more enjoyable experience for the next generation kind of coming up and kind of getting to the outdoors and just allowing them to have fun, but also respect the resource and understand why we all do this. Yep. So, Chase, any other kind of final thoughts?
That's it. Thank y'all for having me on, and I hope this inspires somebody to teach them the right way.
Absolutely. Well, perfect. Well, guys, if you enjoyed this episode, go leave us a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. If you're an audio listener, that really helps us out on the show. Or if you listen on Spotify, leave us this a 5-star review. Again, really thankful for everybody that does that. YouTube viewers, appreciate everybody watching this podcast. Again, audio listeners, appreciate y'all listening. We'll catch you back here on the next episode from the Southern Outdoorsman. And remember, guys, y'all stay Southern.